Have you ever felt like something inside you wants to change, but the world around you keeps reflecting the same situations, the same patterns, the same impasses? As if reality were stuck on replay, showing you repeated versions of who you once were, even when everything inside you screams for a new life? This isn't a coincidence. It's a reflex. And it happens because the universe doesn't respond to what you consciously desire, but to the silent vibration of who you are still being, even without realizing it. These reflexes don't arise to punish you, they arise to remind you of the invisible script that's still active within you. An identity script you didn't write yourself, but inherited, absorbed, repeated. A conditioned self that learned from an early age that it needed to fit in, please, survive, and that self is still there, whispering decisions automatically, editing dreams before they're even dreamed, vibrating fear while your mind repeats courage. That's why, despite your efforts, visualizations, or affirmations, reality remains the same. Because it doesn't matter what you think, it matters who's thinking it. This is the truth that few have the courage to face. Your current identity was not freely chosen. It was shaped by necessity. From contexts where you had to protect yourself, remain silent, and adapt. And these layers, accumulated over a lifetime, formed a vibrational code that the universe reads with absolute precision. It doesn't read your intentions. It reads your frequency. And as long as that frequency is aligned with scarcity, invisibility, or self-judgment, no desire can manifest anything different. But here's the most liberating part. Identity isn't destiny. It's a narrative. It's an unconscious choice that can be brought to consciousness and transmuted. You don't need to destroy who you were. You need to recognize that that vibrational character, however functional it may have been in the past, no longer serves the present. And letting go of that character is the beginning of everything. Because it's in this act of letting go that you emit a new signal, a pure signal, without noise, without contradiction. And that's exactly what the field is waiting for to collapse new realities in your direction. Think about it. How many parts of you are operating today based on old scripts? How many decisions are still made under the control of fear of not being accepted, inherited guilt, the urgency to prove yourself? And what's more, how many times have you walked away from what you truly wanted because you believed it wasn't the time, it wasn't possible, it wasn't for you? None of this is true, but all of it vibrates as if it were, and that's why it manifests itself. The universe isn't late. It's waiting for your field to clear enough to recognize what's already yours. And the clearing begins when you stop trying to convince life that you deserve it, and start remembering that you already are. Not because of what you do, but because of who you are, who you always were before you were shaped. Right now, as you read these words, realize, perhaps you are one step closer to the truest version of yourself. Maybe what's missing isn't effort or more technique, but a pause deep enough for you to listen to the inner noise and realize that this noise comes from a script that can now be turned off. And when you do, when your field vibrates with the wholeness of someone who no longer needs to hide, the universe, which has never been blind, will simply reflect this new signal, without delay, without effort, because the reflection is immediate when the frequency is clear. But letting go of an old script doesn't happen with positive thinking. The mind that carries these scripts doesn't dissolve just because you want it to. It needs to be seen, heard, acknowledged. Because, as much as it hurts to admit, there are parts of you that still believe these scripts. Parts that still believe they need to be invisible to survive. That it's safer to conform than to expose yourself. That receiving love without effort is dangerous. That pain is the price to pay for any reward. These fragments aren't mistakes. They're protective mechanisms. And until you embrace them, they will continue to filter your reality. This is the blind spot of most seekers, trying to manifest a new reality without changing the self that is operating the manifestation. It's like trying to write a new story with the same hand that still trembles with fear. It's okay to tremble, but you need to realize that you're trembling. You need to become aware of who is in control when you decide, choose, react, or wait. Your old identity isn't the villain. It's the scared child who learned to hide, who understood too early that being who they are brought risk, criticism, rejection. So they created a persona, a functional version. And that version worked. It got you here. But now you feel like it's no longer enough. That something needs to fall. That something needs to let go. Because there's an increasingly visible inconsistency between what you want to experience and what you still vibrate automatically. And this imbalance isn't resolved with technique. It's resolved with reconnection, with presence, with the decision to no longer abandon ourselves in the name of external approval. Because the truth is, many of us are still trying to manifest ourselves to become someone else. We still think that when reality changes, we'll finally be able to relax. We'll finally be able to breathe. We'll finally be able to be. But the field doesn't respond to future happy endings. It responds to the vibration you hold now. And if you now vibrate like someone who needs to prove, chase, compensate, justify, then that's what the universe reflects, not out of malice, but out of vibrational coherence. The universe doesn't deliver what's fair, it delivers what's compatible. And vibrational compatibility isn't about deserving, it's about being. You don't manifest what you want, you manifest what you are while you want it. That's why the collapse of reality doesn't happen when you wish it badly enough, but when you decide to be the one who's already vibrating at the end of that line. When you no longer wait for change to feel relief, you feel it now. You no longer wait for recognition to love yourself. You love yourself now. And this now isn't a mental trick. It's a profound vibrational choice that only happens when your inner field is clear of old noise. What are these noises? They're phrases you've heard so many times, they've become internal truths. You can't. This is too much for you. You have to work really hard. Who are you to dream so big? These phrases weren't just words, they became programming. And these programs generate decisions. They avoid risks. They create elegant sabotages that appear as prudence. They plant self-censorship where there should be expression. And all of this is vibrating. It's sending signals to the field. Even when you're silent, even when you seem strong, even when you repeat empowering affirmations. Because the field doesn't respond to what you say, it responds to who you are in the silence. And as long as there are fragments of you saying, "I'm not enough yet," the universe responds, "Then it's not time yet." But the moment is here, and it always has been. The field doesn't create reality when you ask it to. It reveals the reality that already exists at your frequency. And the question is, what reality is your frequency revealing? Now breathe, feel. Not as an empty ritual, but as a conscious pause to observe who you are in this moment. Is there judgment? Is there rush? Is there internal pressure? Or is there space, acceptance, openness? The old identity needs to be seen without hatred, without shame, only with the honesty of someone who understands that it was okay to have protected themselves, but that now it's safe to let go of that armor, because no one enters the new still wearing the clothes of trauma. And when you begin to realize this, not as theory but as lived experience, something shifts. The vibration changes. The field responds, and suddenly the reality seems so distant, just appears. But acknowledging the old script isn't enough, because even when you do, something strange happens. You're afraid to let go. A part of you clings to the old identity as if it were the only safe way to exist, as if by abandoning it, you're betraying something or someone. And in a way, you are. You're betraying the character you needed to be to survive. You're breaking a silent pact with a version of yourself that was very effective at protecting you, but that also kept you small, limited, conditioned. This moment is uncomfortable. It's that point between the version that no longer serves you and the new one that hasn't arrived yet, a kind of identity void, a silent crossing where you don't yet know who you are, but you know you can no longer be who you were. And this limbo is where many give up. Running back to the old emotional comfort zone, returning to the familiar script even if dysfunctional. For a simple reason, it still gives a sense of control. But true identity, the one that manifests coherent realities, doesn't need control. It needs presence. Authentic presence, without performance, without expectation, without urgency. A presence that isn't trying to prove anything to the world. That doesn't seek approval or applause. That doesn't need manifestation as proof of personal worth, because it already knows it's enough. And that's exactly where the collapse of reality begins. Not when you desire more, but when you stop negotiating who you are in an attempt to be accepted, when you let go of the need to fit in, to be understood, to be celebrated, and simply embrace who you are, with honesty, with wholeness, with loving steadfastness. It's curious because at this point many people say, but if I stop wanting, seeking, trying, won't I be giving up? And the answer is, it depends. Giving up is abandoning yourself. Letting go is rediscovering yourself. And this rediscovery changes everything because it takes the manifestation out of the realm of scarcity, of trying to achieve something, and places it in the realm of expansion, of remembering that everything is already available. But this reunion requires courage, the courage to lose what was never you. To break free from inherited roles, ancestral conditioning, social patterns you never chose, you simply repeated. And this courage isn't aggressive, it's silent. It's the courage to let go of the victim narrative. To let go of the role of the one who struggles, the one who suffers, the one who tries to be good. It's the courage to be you, even if that means no longer pleasing so many people. Because here's the truth few are willing to hear. Every coherent manifestation requires a symbolic death. Something in you must die so another part can be born. And this death isn't literal, it's vibrational. It's the death of the script that tells you you'll only be loved if you obey. You'll only be recognized if you're impeccable. You'll only be valued if you're always available. You'll only be accepted if you don't bother. And when you begin to let go of these conditions, something begins to breathe within you. A new frequency, a new posture, a new way of moving in the world. More centered, more silent, more magnetic. Because true coherence doesn't shout, it emanates. At this point, reality begins to shift, but not with fireworks, with small confirmations, with subtle synchronicities, with unexpected encounters, with spaces that were previously closed suddenly opening up. And you realize it wasn't the world that changed, it was you who began emitting a different signal. And this sign doesn't need to be defended, it stands on its own, because it's born of a vibration that doesn't doubt itself, that doesn't negotiate its limits, that doesn't abandon its truth to maintain fragile bonds. And this kind of presence, the universe understands, because that's exactly what it mirrors. Perhaps now you're feeling something moving inside, a strange lightness, a new silence. This is no coincidence. This is the field beginning to respond, not to your effort, but to your coherence. And if you hold this, even for a few minutes, even without proof, even if it seems strange, you'll see that the field responds instantly, because it's always been responding. What changes is what you emit, what you decide to stop carrying, what you finally release. But there's an even more delicate point in this process. The moment you let go of the old script and the new one hasn't arrived yet. This gap between what no longer serves and what hasn't yet been born is where the rational mind goes crazy. It demands guarantees. It wants to know what will happen, how, when, with whom. But the quantum field, the true mirror of reality, doesn't operate on guarantees. It responds to states of being. And it is precisely in this vacuum that the true collapse begins. Because here you no longer have control of the narrative. Here you no longer have a rehearsed role. Here you can no longer hide behind affirmations, techniques, visualizations, or speeches. All of this belongs to the self you are letting go of. All of this was part of a script that operated on effort, on trial, on doubt. Now you are in new territory, and therefore uncertain. But it's in this emptiness that you find the purest possibility, that of being without needing to prove it. This is where you begin to access the vibrational collapse, not of reality outside, but of identity within, the collapse of the character, of the mask, of the spiritualized, self-centered persona who memorized the right words, but still felt afraid of being truly seen. You begin to realize that all the rituals you performed were attempts to fill that space with something known. But what the field expects is the opposite. It wants to see what you hold on to when everything seems uncertain. When there's no evidence, when there's no answer, when you're naked, without a character, without a ready-made narrative. That's where the universe mirrors your courage. And here's the paradox. The field collapses faster when you stop trying to collapse it. When you're so present in the now that there's nothing left to achieve. When your presence becomes enough. even without achievements, without applause, without promises. That's when the news begins to reveal itself. Because the new reality you've been waiting for isn't out there, waiting to happen. It already exists, but it requires a new vibrational code to manifest. And this code isn't born of effort. It's born of liberation. It's at this moment that you begin to recognize that there's nothing left to do. There's only something to be. And this difference is immense. Because doing is still part of the old character. Being is born of presence. And it's this presence that moves everything. Subtly, the universe begins to rearrange the pieces, but not in the linear fashion the mind expects. Not by logic, not by meritocracy, but by resonance. You begin to attract what is on the same frequency as your new wholeness. People who don't require you to make an effort to feel loved. Situations that don't leave you in doubt. Paths that no longer require you to break yourself to fit in. Everything begins to come by fitting in, not by struggle. And here you understand the simplest and most forgotten truth. The universe doesn't need you to scream. It just needs you to stop lying to yourself. The frequency of inner truth is infinitely more magnetic than any external effort. This is the moment the field collapses. Not by technique, not by visualization, but because you finally got off track and let reality reorganize itself based on who you really are and no more than what you've learned to appear. Now that you've begun to shed your old roles, you might be feeling something uncomfortable. A sense of no longer knowing who you are. A new silence where before there was the constant noise of attempts to improve, to conquer, to be enough. This emptiness isn't a mistake, it's the beginning of truth. See, your whole life you've been programmed to make sense, meaning to others, to the system, to your family, to the unspoken expectations that hung in the air. You learned that acceptance was a matter of adjustment, and you adjusted. Sometimes you bow. Sometimes you keep quiet. Other times you faded away. And each gesture of self-abandonment created an invisible script. I need to be this to deserve that. But now, by letting go of these scripts, you begin to tread new ground, that of true identity. And here, the rules change. Here, you no longer need to explain yourself, or justify yourself, or repeat the performance that gave you false security. But the mind, trained for years to live by these codes, feels panic. It associates freedom with danger. It associates truth with rejection. It associates authenticity with loneliness. So it tries to negotiate. Can I be myself, but still please? Can I let go without losing what I've achieved so far? And it is at this point that the most subtle vibrational test takes place. Because the universe isn't asking you to prove you deserve a new reality. It's waiting for the moment you stop negotiating with your authenticity. The moment you say, even if silently, I no longer need to keep myself small to fit in. This is the moment the mirror begins to shift. Because you're no longer vibrating effort, you're vibrating truth. And truth has a frequency that cuts through the layers. It rearranges, it reverberates, it attracts without needing to pull. But there's a crucial detail here. The new identity that begins to emerge isn't something you create. It's something you allow. It's not born of a strategy. It's born of deconditioning. Therefore, this block is an invitation to the most radical courage, to sustain your vibration even when nothing outside has changed yet. Because the old version of you, the one you're letting go of, wants immediate proof. I want to see the signs. I want to know if it's working. But this, too, is part of the old script. The anxious search for external confirmation. Now the collapse happens in silence. The new identity doesn't scream. It sustains, it observes, it trusts, because it no longer depends on validation to exist. It is your origin, your factory frequency, the one that was always there, but was drowned out by all the versions you had to interpret to survive. This is the moment when the viewer begins to sense that he's not becoming better. He's returning to who he always was, before the fear, the comparison, the judgment. And at that point, reality begins to bend. Not because you bent it, but because, by removing the distortions, it can finally mirror what has always been available. Do you see? The new identity isn't a prettier mask. It's not an improved version of the old one. It's a field. A state of being that needs no justification to exist. But here, a silent challenge arises, and perhaps the most dangerous of all, the temptation to return to the old just because it is familiar. After so many years living in roles that guaranteed security, recognition, and survival, sustaining a new vibration can feel like walking on empty ground. It's subtle. The rational mind even accepts the change, but the body, which holds the vibrational memory of the past, still carries automatic impulses, avoiding confrontation, asking for permission, waiting for approval, seeking proof. It is in this interval between the decision to be and the stabilization of being that many give up. They mistake the discomfort of transition for a sign of failure. They think, maybe I'm not ready, maybe this won't work, maybe I need to go back to the way things were. But no, this discomfort is not regression. It is reconfiguration. It's the old field dissolving as the new takes hold. It's as if you're tuning into a new radio station. For the first few seconds, there's noise, instability, interference. But if you stay on the frequency, even without understanding everything, even without guarantees, the signal clears. Sound emerges. The new reality begins to become audible. But maintaining this frequency requires something that was not taught in schools, nor in religions, nor in traditional psychology. It requires vibrational intelligence. And this intelligence isn't mental. It's energetic. It's the ability to recognize when you're falling back into old scripts, not through thoughts, but through your inner vibration. Example: you may be repeating a mantra of abundance, but if your body is contracted, your chest closed, your breath shallow, you're not a vibrating presence. You're vibrating survival. And that's why the universe doesn't respond to what you say. It responds to what you issue. At this point in the script, the viewer already understands. It's not enough to think differently. You have to be different from who thought. But now he begins to realize, as this vibration manifests itself in everyday life, in gestures, in automatic reactions, in silences filled with fear. So the invitation here is not to do more. It's to silence more, observe more, feel more. Because it is in this empty space where the old commands begin to fall silent that the new frequency takes hold. And the good news is you don't have to force this new identity. You just have to stop resisting it. She's already here. It reveals itself when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop justifying yourself, when you stop trying to deserve it, because your presence is enough. And in this silence, something magical happens. Reality begins to read you correctly. It stops responding to the echo of fear and begins to respond to the clarity of being. This clarity doesn't scream, it doesn't beg, it doesn't perform. It just vibrates. And the right vibration, sustained without urgency, without doubts, without disguises, is irresistible for the field. He answers, always. When you hold a new vibration long enough, something starts to shift out there, but in a way that will never be the way your rational mind planned. People who previously ignored you now notice you. Opportunities that seemed blocked simply appear. The answers you insisted on seeking arrive unexpectedly, without noise, without rushing. This is no coincidence. This is resonance. You changed the transmission frequency, and consequently the reception frequency changed as well. But there is a subtle paradox here, which needs to be understood with vibrational maturity. The universe only mirrors a new reality. After that, you behave as if you already have it, even if there is no external evidence yet. This is the part that requires energetic courage. Why sustain the vibration of abundance before the money arrives? Sustain the vibration of trust before a healthy relationship appears. Sustain the vibration of health before the body heals itself. Is what separates those who understand the field from those who lives the field. It's in this gap between the new being vibrating and the world still adjusting that many fall back into the old pattern. They think it didn't work, that nothing has changed, that it's just a nice theory. But the quantum field does not answer the repeated question. He responds to the silent consistency. You don't convince the field in haste, you transform it with coherence. And this coherence is the true, pure signal. It's built on every little moment you could give in to the old identity, but choose to take a deep breath and stay in the new place. It's when someone provokes you and you don't react, because now your vibration no longer has the hole that needed that validation. This is when the old narrative of "I'm not good enough" arises. But instead of fighting it, you observe it. like someone watching a memory of a character who is no longer you. It's when you're alone, without likes, without confirmations, without applause, and yet you remain whole, connected with the version that it is already, even if the world hasn't realized it yet. This is the true collapse of the new reality. It doesn't start with a big external miracle. It starts with the inner miracle of stopping self-doubt. At this point, the universe is no longer responding to requests. It is responding to codes. And the codes are simple. What you support effortlessly becomes inevitable. Your vibration begins to shape the path. Synchronicities intensify. Doors that previously didn't exist appear. But be careful. This doesn't happen because you achieved something. It happens because you failed to prevent it. You've stopped supporting the old character, the one who all along was sabotaging the collapse of the new reality out of fear, doubt, or a need for approval. This is the moment when co-creation turns recognition. You stop creating from scratch and start revealing what has always existed at another vibrational level. And that's when everything speeds up. Because in the field, vibrational clarity is speed. Most people believe that the universe responds to their actions, but the quantum field actually responds to their coherence. And when this coherence finally stabilizes, the world ceases to be a challenge to be overcome and becomes a natural extension of your new vibration. This does not happen with an explosion, nor with fanfare, nor with the applause of fate. It happens with silence, fluently, with that strange feeling that things just start working. It's an invitation that comes effortlessly. It's a conversation that changes your life without you expecting it. It's an almost imperceptible change, but it reorganizes everything around it. At this stage, you realize that the world doesn't change because you convinced it. It changes because you stop doubting, and it is this inner stillness, this serene steadfastness, that takes the final step in the collapse. You are no longer asking for the manifestation to happen. You became her frequency, and now the field has no choice but to reflect. There is no negotiation. There is no resistance, because you are no longer projecting the desire to have, you are emanating the certainty of being, and this is visible. People feel it, even if they can't explain it. Opportunities come, even if you don't look for them. Reality bends, even without you asking. But be careful, this is only possible when you abandon any attempt to manipulate time, because time, as your linear mind understands it, does not exist in the quantum field. What exists is stabilized vibration plus silent permission. The more you insist on when will it happen, the more you vibrate, and the field reads absence, not desire. But the moment the question disappears, when you simply vibrate as who you already are, the collapse happens. And it happens fast, because the only thing the universe was waiting for was for you to stop waiting. At this point, there is no more resistance, no more anxiety, no more self-questioning. There is only presence. You live the desired reality without needing to confirm whether it has arrived, because it stopped being something future and started being a natural extension of your non-negotiable identity. This is where true manifestation resides, not in mental effort nor in perfect technique, but in clear, sustained, and embodied vibration. And in this state, the universe ceases to be a reward system and becomes an exact mirror of your entirety. You came here looking to manifest something, a change, a new reality, a sign from the universe. But what you may not have realized is that in fact was looking for himself. Because everything you desired already existed as potential in the field. It was already vibrating around you. It was already ready. The only thing missing was someone to remember, not remembering with the mind, but with the body, with the field, with consciousness. Remember who you were before you learned to doubt, before being molded to fit a version of the world that didn't honor its entirety, before you begin to narrate with fear, urgency, and effort. This is why the real quantum manifestation is not a process of conquest, but of return. A return to your original vibration. And this origin does not shout. It does not demand. It does not force. She just and. It pulses in the center of your chest when you silence the noise. She appears in the moments when you're not trying to be anyone, just being. It manifests when you stop performing for the universe and start walking as if you know you already belong to everything. At that moment, reality surrenders. She bows not to her strength, but to her coherence. And here's the big truth. You didn't come here to learn how to manifest. You came to unlearn what taught you to doubt yourself. And in this unlearning, you do not become someone new. You just remember the being you never stopped being. This being that does not negotiate presence, who does not beg for love, that does not wait for permission to exist with truth. This being is the real collapser. He doesn't live waiting for the field. He lives in communion with him. And so manifestation is not something that happens later, but something that happens now, every second you allow yourself to vibrate as who you already are. So before you leave this video, take your time, stay here in silence, take a deep breath, close your eyes if you can, feel what remains, feel what pulses, even when thoughts cease. This is what you feel, is the field responding to your real presence. You don't need to do anything, you just need remember and sustain, because the universe does not respond to your effort, he responds to your truth. And now that you remembered, the field will remember too. Get ready, because when the vibe becomes non-negotiable, reality has no choice but to obey. And when that happens, it will seem like magic. But you will know it was just you coming home.